And with that, Barb, you are on the floor.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Thank you, everybody. We have 22 participants today. And we'll go through a roll call when we get to Steve's section. But let's just welcome everybody and really thank you for attending today. I'd like to just first thing on the agenda was to introduce a few new members that are attending. I don't know if Anna is on. Let me look at my participant list. She might join us from Minnesota Cable Communications Association, Anna Boroff. And then from Lumen, AKA before that was CenturyLink, is Dana Bailey. And sitting in for Liz Hamilton is Casey Lawrence. So welcome, Lumen folks. And then from Premier Locating is Hawthorne Yorbeck. And is there anybody else new today? Keith Novy, have you attended before?
Unfortunately for you, I have.
Okay,
yep.
I thought you had, but I just wanted to check. So thanks, Keith. Anybody else new? So with that, let's just jump into the meeting and let's have a great session.
Okay, next thing on the agenda is some administrative chair cleanup items. And basically, we knocked 99% of it down last time. So this is going to primarily serve as reminders for everyone else. Basically, the agenda, since we are not needing to vote on anything, this basically is an unofficial meeting, unofficial meeting. We don't need to vote stuff in or out. The next item on the list would be the group assignments. What I'm asking for there is, to the degree that everybody that is here as a chair, I think we're still missing Bob Besquez, which might be an issue, but he's supposed to be filling in for Brad Anderson. So I've got folks targeted for removal of Tim Tabor, Kendall Hillis, Michelle Anderson, Sam Rickert, Corey Richter, Rich Revere, I think is how you would say that, and Andy Walsick. So to the degree that those folks have been in the past made an initial effort to join us and then have kind of ducked out the back door, that's what I'm seeing right now. And so just open to the floor. What I would ask is whether or not there's anyone here that thinks that those folks should be left on the listing, or if there's somebody else that they think should just by virtue of their meetings and not participating should not be with us any longer.
I'm here for covering for, this is Justin Larson. I'm here covering for Ken.
Okay, I'm sorry, who was that, please?
Justin Larson.
Okay, got it. Thank you, Justin. Okay, with that, and Barb's already gone over our new joins, and that takes us on to the next thing of 1 minute. Let me let Naaman in.
You have a lot to do there when you run the show.
Yeah, I don't know. I got some problem here with this thing not willing to advance. And there we go. The next things I would like to just point out is for right now, we've only got 17 people that have officially made the effort to join the group through the login process. So this is just a reminder. It's on www.mgacepc.net. And up in the upper right-hand corner of that landing page, you'll see a thing where it says login. That'll take you to a screen which will walk you through what the process is to get an account with us. And what that achieves for you is once you have the account, off the left-hand sidebar using the Underground Utilities link, will jump you to a web page. And from there, we keep the list of who's participating and detail information, how to reach them is a secure item. So, but with once you have an account, You can click on that and you've got the contact information for anybody in the group. And similarly, down in the working papers, which are labeled private, clicking on that will take you to your work groups, the smaller work groups open folder, which will allow you to put collaborative type items in those folders and be able to edit and share with others. Similarly on the wiki, again, a private function of this group. When you click on that rascal, it'll drop you into a web page that's got some stuff on that you can fully go in and edit. And I've recently put up a bunch of stuff there after talking to the Minnesota Utilities Commission folks, maps of service areas for the state and, you know, some other additional contact information. So take a look at that. And again, that's the whole idea of creating the user account, is it allows us to collaborate in a private environment, whereas certain meeting items are available to the general public. And last but not least, that private folder link down there at the bottom gives you a place to, if you want to drop something of project information that's of a general nature versus your specific smaller work group, that's where you can go ahead and do that. Okay, so next up on the list is our group reports, and just kind of knowing where we were with what that would look like. It was apparent that we had some extra time for us to go over on Rob's discussion. So first up is going to be Travis. You've got the floor, and to the degree that I can get you back to where you need to be. 1 second, please.
So I have a little bit to share. I'll try to be brief. We had a joint meeting with the group 2, the located data flow group, and we tried to narrow down some of the specifics, some of the vertical and horizontal accuracy numbers and other things, other attributes that need to be collected that are important while doing this whole GPS mapping. And so some of the stuff that the locator is concerned about versus what the mapping guys are concerned about are they kind of cross over. And so we were just trying to maybe segregate and figure out our lanes and what we're going to be taking care of. And I'm mostly concerned about, you know, what the guy in the field needs to collect. You know, when the locator in the field, if he's going to be asked to do GPS mapping on top of his regular locates, he's not going to want to slow down too much. And so the more you put on his shoulders, the more he's going to be frustrated, and the data will tend to suffer after a while too. So we're just trying to, and there's only so much he can do. Obviously he's using a magnetic field locator to do his locating. He can't actually see what he's locating. So there's certain attributes that he doesn't know the size of pipe. He doesn't know possibly maybe the pair count. He doesn't know some, the material that it's made up of. And so what he's mostly concerned about is, you know, or what he can collect would be, you know, spots where there's assets above ground and also the depth of the line. And then I was also concerned with the horizontal accuracy numbers and the accuracy of the depth and such too. So we were trying to narrow it down on what's a good area for the accuracy that we should be asking for horizontally. And since the one called buffer, you know, at you know, when you got 18 inches or 2 foot, you know, you want to get it as accurate as possible. Like Rob was saying, they're after centimeter accuracy, but when you're starting to get into Trimble units and such, you're also leaving out a lot of the small contractors, small municipalities, and that can't afford that kind of equipment. And then you're also getting involved with RTK. So then if we can at least call for maybe at least 1 foot accuracy is where we kind of landed on as the two groups, try to get 1 foot or less. And then you know, if you can do RTK, fabulous, but at least we're trying to at least get something down on the map, get it mapped out. And so we went over these different parameters, RTK, HDOT, PDOT, uncertainty levels. And in the end, I kind of got a rough idea of where we need to go for the locating group and leave the rest up for the mapping group, and they can expand on that. And so after that, in our leadership group that we had last week, you know, we talked about maybe starting to schedule some video demos, some online demos, and there's lots of different vendors, just like ProStar or PointMan, And then you got, Esri Collector, Survey 123, you got our subsurface maps, you got Utililogix, Vivax unit and such, that we were thinking that I maybe should send out an invite for vendors to present their wares. I mean, something where they can, give us an explanation of what they want to show for a presentation within the larger group here possibly, but keep it within a 10-15 minute frame. And I'm not even sure if that's possible. What we maybe will do on top of that is, I think Steve had the suggestion is maybe just allow them to submit a video, a 15-minute demonstration video we can put online somewhere. And then as the user's time allows, they can get on there and just watch the demonstration videos. And then if there are some more Q&A or more interest in certain vendors, we can maybe invite them in instead of just opening it up to everybody. I'm just trying to narrow it down. I'm trying to narrow down the focus and trying to make some hay here. So it's just, anyway, that's where we're at with group one. So.
I had a question, Travis, with what you heard from Rob. How does that fit into where you're headed?
Yeah, that's a lot to where we're, what we've always been working on. And so, yeah. The transparent earth, it's been around a while, and it was developed by Enbridge, by the way. They developed that whole system for Enbridge, and Enbridge had a lot of say-so on how they wanted the system. So I liked the system. The system's set up, it's easy to use. However, it's an enterprise system, so it's a very expensive system. That means you have to, tell them roughly how many users you're going to have, and they just kind of pull a number out of the air. And when you get into GPS, I don't know what your guys' experience is, but when you get into not necessarily GPS, but GIS, hosting, people that do GIS hosting tend to pull money out of you constantly. And Esri is a little bit that way, but they're not so bad as some of your collection houses that will say, hey, we'll take your data and we'll host it for you. And then everything is a change order. You'll get logged down with so many change orders. Oh, you got to pay extra for this. You got to pay extra for this and this and this. And that's what I want to try to avoid. I'm not sure if Transparent Earth's like that, but Esri obviously is the biggest monopoly. I mean, that's the way, and I like to bring them in and see what we can do that way. But obviously OCC might have something too to house all this data if that's what our plan is. But we really don't need to house it in one place. We just need APIs to share it. And so they are at the right track. I like how they're doing that, sharing and being able to have an app out in the field for anybody to use and being able to sync it up and downstream. Real simple. It all makes sense. They're on the right track. They're doing the right thing. But I'm just wondering. I mean, that the way I understand it, they're just doing that in the DOT though, and so it's not statewide throughout all the utilities. And so that's our big hurdle: is how are we going to implement this to the telecoms and everybody else? I mean, that's where we're getting the most feet to drag is in the telecom industry.
Travis, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, as well as I know, that goal that they have to have RTK with centimeter grade accuracy for every shot that they shoot, that's a very tall order. I mean, I go out and shoot projects, and I mean, there are areas of projects where that's really almost unattainable.
It is a really tall order, and it's really going to slow things down. Now, that's the DOT, so they do have more time on their hands versus a lot of other contractors. So, and what I was seeing in their data, they're basically collecting. It looks like drain tile or some kind of culvert because they got a degree angle flow and stuff on there. So that does take more time. You're going to get on RTK because you get to know what the gravity is going to be doing to that pipe. So. But as for what we're concerned about, where we're getting the most is from communications. They just don't want to slow down. They're throwing in fiber left and right, and when they're asked to GPS something, they'll just put a Garmin unit on top of their trencher, or they'll just have somebody run it down with the ATV real fast. And the feedback that I'm getting from that industry is basically we don't care if we are depth centimeter accuracy because we're going to go back out there and locate it anyway. All we care about it is on this side of the street or that side of the street. So that's going to be a hard one.
I would expect that most of them are going to try to would have to hire it out to begin with. I mean, they're just not going to handle it in house, and it's just going to add more expense on top of what we're already talking about.
Yeah, that's why he said he had the inspectors pretty much doing the quality level as found kind of data, and I think that's where that they needed to, because it's more of a specialized service that you just can't put in anybody's hands.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Next up would be Bob Bisquez, and I believe, Bob, that I've got your strip up here. I'm just trying to get you back to where you need to be.
Hey, Keith Novi here. Can I make a comment on, it kind of relates to what Travis was talking about there?
Sure, go ahead, by all means.
Okay. So, he made the comment about, you got a locator out there and getting frustrated and slow them down. And I kind of want to challenge this group. Is the locator the right person to be out there doing this? They got a job to locate and get accurate locates on the ground. Do we want them being worried about GPSing and mapping correctly and everything else? And I'm coming from a perspective of there's no limits on ticket loads at this point, so we can get 800,000 locate requests in a year, and we're relying on that one locator to be able to do that. Now we already have limited resources, and now we're gonna add another job and expect him to do it accurately, both jobs. It's just something we want to consider.
Hey, thank you, Keith. Bob, are you ready to run the show?
Yep, ready to go.
All right, there you go, sir. Slides are up.
All righty.
We still see Travis's slide.
Okay, hold on one moment. Sorry.
There we go. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so this is Bob Vasquez. I'm on the from a municipal setup, City of St. Paul. I'm filling in for Brad. He put these slides together. I've reviewed them and everything, so we're in the same group here. So, but if there's something that I miss or gloss over, that's the reason. In our group, we've kind of boiled a lot of stuff down already in the meetings that we've had already. One of the bigger deals that we've come across is, before I even get into the slides, I wanted to ask a question of Rob before he jumped off, but I knew that we were going over, so I held my tongue. But I'm going to throw out a couple of little things here before I start talking, and related to how old documents were managed. It didn't sound like they were trying or had a real big focus on going back and getting at any old documentation. I know that was referenced, but it seemed like the majority of their focus was on how to collect now and make it available in the future, make it all digital, all that, which is good. That's the way I would probably approach it, the same exact way they're doing it. But I did have a general question about how they can get back at old documents. From a municipal perspective versus a state highway perspective, we've got some fairly dense underground utility areas. I've got a few spots in the city, for example, that have very large vaults that take up almost half the right of way. And being able to locate those very accurately is probably not something that's very easily without the original documentation. So that's one of the reasons that I was going to ask that question. And the other piece that I wanted to throw out there real quick is he mentioned an API. I was wondering how much open, or how very open that was to being able to be used by other integrators. I can count myself as an integrator, so that is a fairly important piece to me. If the data is freely available through an API, as in there's no licensing, charges, that kind of thing. And then I was wondering if they were using some kind of a general data license that they're releasing all the data under. So those pieces there, I think, are things that need to be mentioned. So I'm throwing those out there because I'll probably forget about them as I go through our slides. So back to the slides. Our bigger deal was trying to, the big points that came out of our group meetings was that we needed to strive to make the data and assets as complete and accurate as possible. Pretty much everything that Rob had mentioned is the kind of goal that we're talking about using for grabbing all of this data out in the field, bringing it back in, and then managing it in a way where it's reusable. And when I say reusable, the way I'm thinking about it from a municipal perspective is that I can get back at that data 20 or 30 years from now. And that's why I'm very focused on this open data aspect and being able to use this data down the line. Trimble's the big deal now. Is it going to be the big deal in 20 years? That's kind of where I'm going with all of this kind of stuff. Doesn't matter what you're using in your line products and all that kind of stuff, but when you get into the archiving side of it, how do you manage the data so that it's reusable down the line and it's in a generic enough format while still keeping and maintaining what it was intended to record? You start getting into the 3D side of things, and that adds a level of complication as well. Next slide. Or do I have to run it? Can I run it?
No, you can't run it, Bob.
Okay.
Give me 1 second.
All right.
I'm a little slow on the uptake today, as usual. There you go.
Okay, thanks. I actually had it up and running here. I was ready to share the screen. So,
yeah.
So some of these focus things that we were talking about is beginning development of best practices documentation. I don't know that we're going to want to get into this in too much detail up front, but the best practices aspect is probably one of them. If we can get more presentations like what Rob just handed us, for getting some kind of a cross-section of how other people are addressing some of these things, I would caution everybody that that's from a state level. You get into the municipal and even the utility side of it, they're going to have different things that they're worried about. But from a cross-section of presentations like the one that Rob just gave us, I think that's where we're going to jump into a good best practices list. We want to improve the locate efficiencies as well as the data accuracy. So we already heard that in Rob's presentation, but that's something that's boiled out of our discussions as well in our group. And researching this data exchange, how you move the data back and forth, who's doing what in this area. So those are some of the first things that we want to do in our group, is figure out the basics of these 3 points. And a couple of future goals: new technologies for data collection, and then 3D is going to be a big deal coming down the line. We're not going to be able to get away from it. When we get into the 3D side of things, it's going to require a whole level, or a level of magnitude of being able to attribute the data, most likely in how we're going to position it, figuring out the accuracies, all those kinds of things. And then it really lends itself to the AR aspect, so you can actually see some kind of 3D representation projected onto the ground out in the field. When you start looking at these kinds of capabilities, you can see that that's going to add another whole technology level to things moving forward. Next slide. So with kind of all that in mind, the beginning of this best practices side of it, the workflow for ensuring the as-builts and how we can use that data. And when I say as-builts, from my perspective in the municipality, we're a fairly old city. We've got records that are over 100 years old. We've got them all, majority of them are scanned, but being able to get at them and get at them in a locational aspect, or from a locational reference, in some cases is a little bit of a problem. And not everybody has their records to that level of organization or indexing either. So those are things that we're going to have to address. We'll try and come up with a bare minimum of attributes for field locators to require. I think they've probably got a better handle on that already. Sounded like Rob had a lot of that stuff kind of all figured out, but I'm anticipating that there's going to be other things that are going to be needed to be added on specific types of data that are being recorded out in the field, mostly from the perspective of, they're looking at a drain tile and all that kind of stuff, whereas a utility owner might be looking for something different. And then how do we figure out a way of communicating with the guys that are out in the field and getting some of that data that, when they were talking about being able to record the actual marking process, I've had that in my mind for a long time, but the reason that I never really kind of pushed on that idea is that it seemed like it would take quite a while for it to develop into a bigger mapping system, using all of that data to correct things up. But I think with the technology and the way we can automate things now, that's becoming more and more of a viable option. You get into the improving of the locate efficiencies and data accuracy. You know, there's all different kinds of things that you have to worry about, but you know, from the paper side of it, that's one of my bigger ones because I've got a lot of documents that have been scanned and are ready to go and are geolocated. So I have a lot of that stuff available as well. We also have you know, things that are already in certain coordinate systems, but one thing I'll throw on there is our coordinate system may not necessarily be the same as the one next door to us. So being able to convert different locational schemas back and forth is going to be a big deal. Just as important is being able to hook up to live services. So the REST map services is one example. There are other standards like that, WMS, WFS, those kinds of things that are open. You got the REST map services that are obviously, you know, kind of originating out of the Esri side of things, but there's other similar services available for being able to pull things in as well. And then you've got different mechanisms for doing things out in the field, using different kinds of applications like ArcReader. There are other apps that can be put together or are available for doing those same kinds of things. A lot of the same stuff was mentioned by Rob, so it sounds like they've got a pretty good handle on how some of that stuff can integrate already, so that we're not really necessarily starting from scratch. And then just to kind of finish it out here, researching that existing data exchange standards, that's a real big one, I think, and one that we should kind of put at the top of the list. Everything is about the data. Nothing that we're talking about here would be possible without having all of that data available. So the more and accurate data that we can put together and maintain an archive, and then also make it accessible, the better, because that's what's going to make all of the systems down the line and all of the interchanges work the best. And that's my last slide. Any questions?
Yeah, Bob, thank you very much. This is Barb again. Brad mentioned that he'd be able to give a summary of the work being done in Moorhead at our February meeting, so that we get a different view from a DOT perspective and then a municipality perspective.
And I could probably do something similar from the city of St. Paul if that's of interest.
Yeah.
One item that Brad and I did talk about a little bit, and I haven't really fleshed it out a little bit. I really want to bring it back to our group first. Brad and I are the only ones that really talked about it, but I'm wondering, and I'm going to throw it out to the group here just for people to get to chew on before you guys get to your next meeting. Would it make any sense to build up some kind of a prototype system? We can have various areas around the state and along borderlines where people can start contributing to some kind of a system that starts to hit all of these buttons that we've been talking about. You know, the same kinds of things that Rob is using, all that kind of stuff. While we're building out some system like this, it's a good thing to point to get money flowing or resources flowing for putting things together. You can figure out what works, what doesn't, by having these designated prototype areas, and they can be distributed around the state. They don't necessarily need to be in any one spot. But the point is it's, you can spread it out and let it go for whoever wants to volunteer to participate. But the end goal would be that we'd have some kind of a system that's shareable and we can point to and say, this works, this doesn't work, that kind of thing. Just throwing that out there as an idea. I think our particular group is probably in a good position to spec out something like that.
Yeah, I'd encourage you to spec that out. I think that's a great idea.
Okay, thank you. That brings up Karen in your outreach effort. So the floor is yours, Karen.
Thank you. The outreach group did not meet during the month of October. And so there is very little to report new on our end. I've been tracking the LinkedIn groups that I mentioned during our September meeting. But if there is anything that we can do to help any of the other groups, if they have some surveys, if you're looking for information, need some polling done, please lean on us as a resource. That is what we are here to help with at this point. So, very short update. I'll get you back on track for your schedule.
Quick and dirty. We like it, Karen.
And then do you plan on meeting during this next month?
Yes, we do plan on meeting during this next month. And then after the leadership meeting, I also plan on working with both Fred, who was at the leadership meeting, and Dean to do a co-authored article. So I have plans to reach out to them next week about that it's something that I could hopefully include in spring or our special locate issue.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Karen, just out of curiosity, what did you think of the Rob's presentation? Does that line up with something you'd like to see in publication within damage prevention, or maybe you already have? That's why I'm asking.
I don't have that article specifically. It's definitely something that I'd be interested in. I wrote that down, and I wrote down the recording and exchanging, the white paper that he was talking about, the utility infrastructure data. And so I want to see a little bit more about who was involved in that and see if they would be interested in submitting an article as well.
Okay, very cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Karen, can you just mention who Fred was?
Fred Lesage was from, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, XXL Construction?
No, it's the other way around. It's AXA, which is a huge insurance company. And then apparently the division is called XL, and he's a underground damage prevention specialist, I believe.
Okay. So he talked to us about from the contractor's point of view for underground damages.
Yeah, I think he would be a great voice to advocate for the excavators, which is something that always seems to be a little bit lacking. We hear about it both in articles in the magazine and sessions at the conference that they wish that they had someone that would speak for them. And I struggle to find someone. So I think Fred would be more than willing and would be a great voice.
Okay. And so with that, Dean, you got the floor, sir.
Thanks. Mine will be short as well. You want to put up that one slide that I sent you? Maybe you can't see that as well as I'd hoped. I realize that there's a wide variety of backgrounds and expertise on this call today. So I thought just to dial it back a little bit, if you're wondering whether this the work that we're doing is important or not, CGA, the Common Ground Alliance, just released their locator survey that researched locator perceptions on various matters. And if you take a look in the upper left-hand corner, their wish list for improving accuracy and timeliness of locates, number one is updated maps. So hopefully this group will find a way to provide them the updated and better quality maps that they say that they so badly need. Heath, I thought you'd be interested in that section down in the lower quarter in terms of workload manageability. 8 out of 10 locators thought their workload was manageable. I'm wondering how many of those folks were from Minnesota. Not too many, I don't think. Page 2, Steve. Again, to the point about having better maps, in the upper right-hand corner, the frequency of late and inaccurate locates. Many of the locators feel that these frequently happen, either a mislocate or a late locate. And looking at the bottom, roughly 35 to 40% of those could be impacted by updated maps. So if those perceptions are anywhere near correct, the work that this group is doing could be potentially very important for the locate industry. We've conducted an initial review of the regulatory framework, and as Rob alluded to, there's really not a lot out there in terms of federal regulation that we can find so far. There's a PHMSA rule that deals with pipelines only in the PIMA viewer. There's also some general guidance for sharing GIS data. but that really provides more of a framework for evaluating what to share and what not to share. And it really talks about using a balancing test. So we've been unable to uncover anything specific in terms of regulatory limitations. And I've reached out both to Keith and also to his counterpart at Excel Energy to see if their compliance or legal departments know anything to the contrary. We also checked with Enbridge. They didn't furnish us with anything additional. So with that, we think we're probably going to be on our own in terms of developing best practices. There's not going to be a lot of limitations other than that balancing test in sharing GIS data. So that the chart that's up there now is our first crack really for the benefits of Group 1 and Group 2 as a framework as to how we might think about and start to organize establishing best practices. And our thought is that it's probably going to vary by industry. So we've got several industries across the top. Maybe we'll add more or not. I'll need feedback from this broader group on that. And then secondly, it's going to depend on, is the information being dispersed internally? Is it going to somebody that the facility operator has a contractual arrangement with? Is it going to somebody else in the construction process that they don't have a contractual relationship with? Or is it going to the general public? And I could see that any of those four categories, the decisions may be different as to what's going to be shared, how it's going to be shared, and whether it's going to be subject to special agreements and so forth. So we're looking for feedback on that now, waiting for feedback from Travis and Brad. And Bob Vasquez, hopefully you'll get a chance to take a look at this and provide some feedback as well. Once we have that feedback, hopefully Groups 1 and 2 will be able to use this as a framework in order to start thinking about how to establish some best practices for information sharing. And I realize that this is all on the non-technical side, and Bob's presentation really focused on more of the nuts and bolts as to how to go about it. So that is it from our group. We did not meet within the last month, but expect to do so next month after we get some more. And
yeah, Dean, do you have time to talk after this about that best practices?
I got 2 meetings back to back right after this, but I'd be available anytime after 4:30 or tomorrow morning if you're
okay. Yeah, I need to go over that with you still. So
good. So I'll send this to the broader group as we start to refine this, and then hopefully those of you who have an interest will give us some more feedback. Any questions?
Yeah, Dean, real quick. Rob put out some, and this might be the blended question that Travis is going towards. Rob put out some standards, and I have to say I was unfamiliar with them from the construction industry. Is that an element of if you don't build to that standard, you carry a legal liability for doing that? Did that make sense?
I'm not sure which standards you're referring to.
He was ASCE 3.8 quality levels.
Yes. Okay. So what that refers to is the quality level of maps that a utility company, for example, would have with regard to its infrastructure, showing where the location is. And when they're referring to quality level B right now what's in place is a 2002 standard. And they had a quality levels depending upon whether it was determined by a locate, determined by an as-built drawing or a survey with the infrastructure exposed, or whether it was less than that. And going forward, this new standard that he's talking about, they're actually going to have centimeter measured accuracy levels for their quality level. So if it's within a certain number of centimeters, it'll be quality A. If it's within a certain a greater range of centimeters, then it would be quality B, and so forth. That's in the process of being adopted right now, at least anecdotally. I understand that most facility operators are nowhere near having even locate quality level maps for most of their infrastructure, much less having it within, GPS RTK tolerances that they were talking about on the use of this point man. So almost anything that we're doing right now is going to improve the status quo, but there will be standards to be dealt with and looked at some point. I don't know, I hope that was responsive.
Works for me. Which takes us on to the next slide. We are 1 minute off schedule. So we're not doing too bad. So to the degree that the floor is open for any discussion items about follow-up and, items maybe that bubble to the top during the discussion today that maybe we should generate a little more focus on or whatever, the floor is open. So with that.
Well, I'll just start. I picked up a couple of things. One is the use of permits to be able to capture the GIS data, as a requirement in the permits. So I thought that was, he used it for CDOT, and maybe municipalities in other areas could use it as well as a way to change some practices. And then second, with Bob, I would encourage us to put together a prototype system of some type. And I'd be willing to work with you on that, Bob, in terms of how do we fund it. I think that might be a great way to start experimenting with what's possible.
Barb, I'd be glad to help you with that permit thing. The way that he managed his permits that he showed you is how I've built how we manage it within my company on all the permits that we pull and request, and all our crews get to the site and see the polygon and know whether or not they can dig and pull up the permit.
Yeah, so that could be a best practice or a recommendation that comes out of this group.
Yeah, there's a need for it, especially in Minnesota, that I've seen.
Yeah, Barb, just let me know when you have a little bit of time to talk through some of this stuff. I mean, some of the longer term things that I had thought about related to like prototyping, it could be considered some kind of an R&D group for the one call side, and maybe that's how you start it up.
And I also liked his connection of the one call tickets to into the system. So yes, I'll give you a ring, Bob.
Yeah, that's exactly what we'd want as a private company, because we got a PM who has a hard time putting the description down, and then it goes to a secretary who has to decipher it, and then it goes to your locator, who's like the third person down the chain who doesn't really understand it. Where I got PMs that want to go into our GIS system and literally draw a polygon, write what they need, and then just be able to submit that into a request system.
Right. And we're going to have the one call center, one call concepts talk in, I think that was a January presentation is what we have them penciled in for.
Barb, I think, weren't we initially thinking for December for them?
Well, I think we wanted to see if Travis was going to pull his group together. So it's really up to Travis was the first one, and then OCC needed a little more time.
Travis, are you still with us?
Yeah, I'm still here. I was just thinking that we were only going to need 10 or 15 minutes, but I'm going to be sending out an email, and with Karen's help too, probably trying to get some proposals for presenters out there. So we'll see where we're at in the next week, I guess.
Yeah, then we'll be able to see what's possible. Yeah, what's out there.
Anything more?
Should we,
Bob, you can't hear
Bobby,
you.
you went on mute.
Yeah.
Yep, sorry. Should we think about spreading out that idea of sharing current capabilities somehow? I mean, beyond one or two, maybe making it into almost a meeting unto itself or half a meeting?
I think the idea that we discussed and Travis's approach was that he was going to put out the, maybe I'm speaking over the top of Travis, but the idea was to allow vendors to, if you will, start submitting ideas to us for their particular product. And then we would host those as videos that individuals in the group could view it, at their own leisure, versus what we had with Rob, as you saw, emerged into a very dynamic discussion. And the idea being where we've got, path leaders or folks that are down the road here a little bit on this. The other individual that we've got potential is Matt Taylor from Alabama. And I think, either your discussion from the standpoint of St. Paul, Brad's discussion from the efforts up here, Moorhead, we can see, I see those discussions as being, again, more dynamic with what we saw with Rob. And
yeah,
Jeff,
I think we got more than a couple in our group too that would probably be in a position to present something as well. That's kind of where I'm going. We could do some kind of a combined thing that was kind of a fast and furious.
So just for clarification purposes, Barb, are you thinking that One Call Concepts would not be ready by December 17th?
Well, they asked for a little more time.
Okay. Would you want me to make an approach to MnDOT to see if they'd be willing to come out and talk about what MnDOT has done?
I would like to, I had made a note that I wanted to reach out to MnDOT to see where they're at. I would, yeah,
Steve,
what I would like.
Steve, this is Brad Henry. Remember, you got two
Brad.
Brads on this call, Brad Henry and Brad Anderson. So if you're going to reach out to MnDOT, who in the world would you reach out to?
I'd reach out to the team over there that's, and there's a little self-promotion here and, full disclosure, but the system that they've got running over there based on GeoMoose might be something that'd be of interest to the group.
I think GeoMoose could generally be, but they really aren't doing anything that you're talking about. Now, let me offer a suggestion. There's quite a bit of work being done in Minnesota on 3D underground utilities. A, locating them in 3D. B, within the construct of the 3802 guideline here, and then turning that into a 3D model. And these projects actually are being done for MnDOT. So I'm just throwing that out. That might be a way to approach this.
So Brad, is that a point of contact you can send over to me, and then Barb and I can massage it?
Yeah, and I'll just give you a quick outline of who to contact, et cetera. And that was kind of, Steve, I sent the note to you. If you can get me the contact information, help me for Rob, because this company has done a project for the Colorado DOT. And I think that project he was talking about when he talked about that 3D model of the underground utilities. So they've done work for MnDOT and they've done work for the Colorado DOT. I just wanted to verify that offline. So that could sort of be a follow-up type presentation a month or two down the road.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll send you some stuff that outline what I'm talking about.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate that.
And Steve, I did reach out to my representative in England about possibly letting us know about their sharing of data between the facility operators and the excavators over there in the dig industry. So I'm still waiting to hear back from them, but that still might be a possibility.
Okay. Okay. So we'll just leave this alone for a bit, and I'll do if you will, around circuit email in the first part of November, and we can finalize who will be the speaker in December. Barb, is that how you'd like to do that? Does that work?
Yeah, I guess I was thinking that if Travis and some of his folks, kind of start from the top, could do something for us in terms of the the very expensive systems and the ones that the municipalities could use, and give us a kind of an overview of capabilities and what some of the trade-offs might be, and to look at this question of who should be collecting the data. That was a question that came up today. As that team one looks at it, who's the person or the group collecting all this data?
We could do that. I mean, I can get with Joe Rabalki, and we can maybe come up with something, at least have a presentation ready for you.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good place to start in December rather than just leave it hanging right now.
Okay. At least it's a definite.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, Travis, this is Justin.
I like it. Less work for me. Okay. Barb, we're coming up on the end of the event, and
yep.
I put up the reminder slide. The next meeting for us is everybody gets a month of November off. The decision was made by the leadership group that we would meet on December 17th and then resume our normal schedule in January. But to dodge Thanksgiving and to dodge Christmas, we picked December 17th. 1 o'clock would be the next meeting. And the goals before next meeting: each person with a registered EPC net account. So if you don't have one, and participation in the group is important to you going forward, please do that. And then, of course, at least one group meeting in the next 45 plus days would be what we'd want to see. Over to you, Barb. Is there anything else?
No, I have nothing else other than the great participation, and I think we're making some good progress. It's exciting. I mean, it's very exciting to hear Rob talk about the 100 prevented damages. I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's what we're after, is better locates and cut that damage number in half again. So thank you, everyone.
Okay, with that, we're a wrap. Appreciate everybody's attendance. And final thought for you, last slide. Have a great Thanksgiving, and talk to you in December.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Steve. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thanks, Steve.
Bye-bye.